Uh, I cannot see, I can only see Shobana as a guest. I cannot see your face.
Oh, you know what? It turned off when I projected, maybe.
There you go.
There we go. Should we just try one more time, just projecting? I don't know what turned the camera off because I didn't consciously change it.
You have to click the top right-hand camera button if you see on top.
Top right. I see one on a bottom panel, so that's what I clicked now. So you're able to see me now, right? So
Yeah,
this is okay?
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Let's keep going with this and we'll see if it gets turned off. Because I just want to make sure that when I project, it still shows, or do I need to change something? Because I don't remember turning off the camera, but I think um, we'll figure it out. It's okay. As long as it's showing now, we can keep going.
Yeah, you're shown. Our department head is here as well, Professor DT.
Hi, nice to meet you, Professor.
There he is.
Thank you for accepting our invitation to your talk tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite and for hosting such an important series to help the women in engineering in your department.
Yeah, Pushpa has been very active on this front, and she's been doing an outstanding job maintaining
Thank you.
this.
Trust me, it's been very hard actually, because I've had to send so many reminders. Because some speakers, they had their own COVID problems last semester. So it was crazy. We had to cancel because one speaker lost 2 family members that same week.
Oh, wow.
And she was depressed.
Oh,
that is sad.
Yeah, we had to deal with a lot of problems because of COVID.
Yeah. I just hope everyone out there is staying safe. I think we're still in the phase where there's some, positive things coming in the form of vaccinations and all of that, but we still need to be cautious and follow the health guidelines. So I hope everyone's staying safe.
well, the good thing is that in both California and Texas, things are going better.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, exactly. Knock on wood.
yeah, in fact, this coming fall, our plan is to go back to the face-to-face mode pre-pandemic. So we certainly hope that things will go fine. But worrisome is the news from India,
Oh, yeah.
which is
It's
getting
bad.
worse, much worse.
My parents live there, and it's like, it's very bad in Mumbai and Delhi. People are dying left and right. It's like the hospitals, no beds, no oxygen tanks, nothing.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. I grew up in Chennai and we have family and friends in Bangalore. And I think all large cities across the country are facing that uptick, is what I'm hearing. We actually have a team in Bangalore. Google TV has a team there. So I was talking with my site lead, and I think it's the same thing because what people are saying, interestingly, is earlier it was in the news and there were numbers and things like that. And now this way people are hearing a lot more within their networks, like people they know or their families are testing positive, so they do feel like the number of cases is skyrocketing. So it's, I think, back to the, let's go back to lockdown and bring the cases back down. So there is some action being formulated so that all the cities can stay safe there.
Hey, your video.
Hey, Dr.
Hello everyone.
So this is our
Good to see
associate
you all.
department head, our speaker. I'm introducing her.
Yes,
Dr.
I
Das
could
is
hear
here.
that.
Very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. And thank you for agreeing to speak tonight.
No problem. Thank you for hosting me.
And Michelle,
Always
are
a
you here
pleasure.
as well?
Yeah,
Michelle?
I saw Michelle's name there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm here. Hi.
So Michelle is here as well, and she's our CS story writer. So she's going to write the story of today's talk.
Right.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, about time to start, Pushpa.
Yeah, so Dr. DT, you can start.
Good evening. My name is DT Huyen, and I'm the interim head of the Computer Science Department at SUT Dallas. And welcome to tonight's lectures in the spring 2021 Grace Lecture Series. This wonderful Women Empowerment Lecture Series, inaugurated back in the spring of 2015, has included many wonderful speakers. And tonight, Dr. Pushpa will introduce our distinguished speaker, Ms. Shobana Radhakrishnan, who is leading Google TV engineering. Back to you, Pushpa.
Thank you so much, Dr. DT. So again, before I introduce our speaker today, Shobana, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. DT, who is our department head, interim department head. He's been very supportive of this talk series through the entire last year. And this went virtual. We went through a lot of challenges, but we still kept going because of Dr. DT's motivation. And also to Dr. Dasko, because he's been attending every single lecture. And I thank him so much for his support. He's the associate department head. Thank you so much, Dr. Dasko. And then Michelle. We want to thank Michelle. She comes for every talk. She's a CS story writer. She puts in a lot of effort in her stories, and I thank her very much for her time and effort. Last but not the least is Norma Richardson. She's not here in the talk today, and I don't see her, but she sets up all the talk related stuff, so I thank her wholeheartedly for getting this talk series moving. Dr. Karen Masidi could not be here today. She had a family problem. Otherwise, she's always here to support me as well. Okay. So can anyone guess what is the talk number for today's talk?
Wait, before we go to that, we also need to thank Dr. Pushpa Kumar, who initiated this whole series of lectures. Thank you, Dr.
So
Kumar.
Dr. Bastani was a speaker too. So thank you so much, Dr. Bastani. And this is can anyone guess what talk number this is? We started in spring 2015, but I'm going to have the audience pitch in for the talk number today. So Dr. Dasko is smiling.
It's 1 a month. There are 12 months in a year. There are that many years. We can do the multiplication.
Can I give you a range, Pushpa?
It's greater than 30.
Between 35 and 40.
It's between 30 and 40.
Okay.
There you go. So
maybe 34.
This is I'm going to give the answer, okay? This is our 32nd talk. So Shobana is going to grace our 32nd talk today. And 32 stories will be written or will have been written at the end of this semester. So this is our last talk for this semester today. So without much delay, I'm going to start introducing today's speaker. So Shobana Radhakrishnan leads our Google TV engineering at Google, focusing on experience, personalization, and cloud systems. Prior to this, she led teams that built high-scale publishing platforms, enabling personalization at Roku. Her experience also includes engineering leadership roles in companies such as Netflix, Symantec, and Yahoo, as well as startups. She loves building great teams and products and always enjoys connecting about TV, media, or tech architectures and processes. Shobana is a big believer in diversity in tech and has been a volunteer, mentor, and advisor for several women in their careers for over 20 years as part of formal and informal programs. She also has run a not-for-profit grassroots organization in the California Bay Area, working with middle schools and high schools, helping girls aspiring for STEM careers. Shobana has a master's in computer science from UIUC and a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from the College of Engineering, Guindy. She grew up in Chennai, India, and now lives in Saratoga, California, with a husband and 2 children. So without further delay, I'm going to hand over the floor. The floor is totally yours, Shobana, and thank you so much for being a speaker today in our GRACE series.
Thank you so much, Pushpa, for the warm welcome and introduction. And I also wanted to acknowledge all the organizers and the leadership in your department. It is very heartwarming personally to see so much leadership support for a series like this, which means a lot to aspiring women in STEM. So your actions mean a lot. So I really want to commend the department on this focus. Before I begin, let me go ahead and project my slides, and then I'll give me 1 minute. All right. So I think everyone can see my slides now.
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. So, Pushpa did a great job of introducing me. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I lead the Google TV, the TV experience on all TV surfaces that Google platform and Android TV platform are powering. This is a global platform, so it applies to pretty much all the countries as well as the US. So that's what I do. Today, I'm super thrilled to be here for two reasons. One is just excited always to speak with the next generation. It's always energizes me personally. But also, I think all of you, I'm excited on behalf of all of you because you have chosen to pursue tech in a great institution at a time when there's so much going on around us. There's just so much revolution and innovation in technology. Think about all the devices that are in our homes and in our hands and in our bags and just working together in the home. This could not have been thinkable like 10 or more years ago. And there's a whole device revolution technology there. And then there's how connected we are through social networking. We are able to connect to anyone in the world as long as they have an internet and a computer. Again, something unthinkable probably 10 or more years ago. And we have technology at our fingertips wherever we go. And we as technologists have the opportunity to have truly global social impact, touch everyone in every corner of the world today. So as someone who has spent a couple of decades in the field, this is like huge. This is huge opportunity for all of you as you stand at the threshold of excellent careers, be it in academia or in the industry. So I'm very excited on behalf of all of you. So wanted to share that at the outset. So today what I thought we'll talk about a little bit, I'll share a little bit about my own career story and journey so you have some background. I also want to highlight some twists and turns along the way and decisions I've made and mistakes and outcomes from them and what I've learned. And with these as a backdrop, I think it'll be great for us to talk about. So in the midst of all these things that could be going on, both by active thinking from you as well as by things that just happen around you, how do you still manage to find your voice and influence and carve out a path for yourself that you feel proud of, you feel satisfied by? And how do you truly become an influencer? And when I say influencer, I'm not talking about just a social media or TikTok or those kinds of influencers, but also like how do you influence as a technologist, the environment around you, the workplace around you, and at a global scale, the world around you. I hope that we can make this interactive and you all are able to also contribute and help me with your questions and answers to some of my questions and shape this session in a way that you all can enjoy and benefit from as well. So before we get into a little bit of my story, I want everyone to imagine this for a minute. So maybe even close your eyes for a few seconds if that helps. Imagine that you are out near a beach on a really nice warm afternoon and there's a cool breeze, very pleasant for the eyes and all the other senses if you can imagine that. And let's say you've decided to go surfing that day, riding on the waves. So you're near the ocean and then the waves could be high or low, harsh or soft or smooth, depending on how the day is, how the breeze is. You're on your surfboard kind of, balancing, but also trying to make progress in the direction that you want to go, into the ocean, to the side, toward the shore, whichever way we want to do. And then imagine how that feels, what you're doing and what's happening around you. And I want us to have this mental model as we think about our careers. Because this is probably a good mental model to think about when you're thinking about a long-term career and the different things that come your way during your careers. Pushpa, I don't know if there's a way for people to either post responses on chat or just speak up, but I would love to hear what people think when they visualize this situation. What are some parallels about what a career could involve? But if it's not possible to do that, it's
Shobana,
fine.
it's possible. So there's a chat on the top. There's a chat icon.
Yes.
You can click on that.
Awesome, great. So if people want to just answer that question of, this part that I asked everyone to imagine briefly, what would be some parallels between this and a career journey? If you can imagine, if you can have that stretch of imagination, what are some parallels? I don't know if people want to post some answers on chat. I don't see a lot of...
People are still thinking, Shobana.
No, I don't have an answer. I don't even know from engineering point of view, what is the research or other thing we could think of in this context?
Sure. I think this was more of a mental model to think about a career, not that's a good response, actually. It's not a literal translation to how you would do engineering or your day-to-day work. Some takeaways that I've heard when posing this question to other groups, maybe I can share, is, so I see someone responding now, don't drown. That's a good one too. It's good to not drown, keep balance. That's a great one. So why don't I give a few more seconds for people to respond? So I see someone saying keeping a balance, not drowning. Anything else? Think about, so I'm just reading the responses for everybody's benefit. Your career is pretty similar in that you do everything you can to achieve certain things, but your environment may force you to follow different paths. That's excellent. I see follow your passion, which is also a really good one to think about. Watch out for any problems. That's a good one too. Awesome. And I see another one, which is you need the knowledge and skill to get up on the waves. So you need to pick that up. I think those are all true. And it also goes back to the first comment of to be a really good engineer, to build industry scale, right? For billions of users around the world, you absolutely need the technical chops and skills, much like to go surfing. You need to work on it. All of those are correct answers or good, relevant answers. The other part is also, I think you need to genuinely enjoy the process of surfing to be able to handle all the waves, ups and downs, balance it and keep going, right? The moment you feel like I'm not enjoying this, what are you going to do? You're going to say, okay, let me go home and relax at home, I'm done. And so that's another part that is equally important is, are you enjoying the ride while you're working on all these things too that you want to accomplish and large systems that you want to build. So let's keep that analogy in our mind as we continue our discussion today. And we'll keep coming back to this analogy a couple of times as well. So a little bit about my story. I grew up in a very conservative South Indian family in the city of Chennai, Tamil Nadu, where I received my bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics. In fact, I fell in love with programming towards the tail end of that, where I used genetic algorithms to try to predict power systems consumption, which is an important problem in India with a high population and resources to distribute electricity and power systems. This was an important problem to solve at scale. And so I ended up choosing genetic algorithms to build to predict. And I really loved that satisfaction you get from seeing your program working accurately and really predicting and really being used. It ended up doing better than some of the programs that were used by the government, which was very, very satisfying. So that's actually when I fell in love with programming and computer science and decided to pursue a master's, moving all the way here to Illinois. And then after graduation, I moved to California Bay Area, starting with this company called Excite at Home. I don't know how many of you can remember, but back in the late 1990s was when this new thing called search engines started taking off. Google, for example, was founded in 98, and Excite, Yahoo were there before that. So I joined Excite, my first job, and had a blast there. Then moved to Yahoo, spent a few years, several years there, running the GeoCities, web hosting, those platforms. Moved to Symantec, completely going from the front-end consumer-facing all the way to close to the device, leading a team implementing device drivers for enterprise security. And then jumped from there to Netflix for a few years, leading the team that handles the video metadata. For those of us who watch TV and movies, this is all the hundreds of pieces of data about the shows, like the actor, the description, the dates. There's like hundreds of attributes that go into satisfying billions of queries. So how do you build systems that satisfy billions of queries efficiently and accurately and personalized? So that's what I was focused on at Netflix. Then moved completely to a different environment, MindFlash startup, solving online learning platforms, helped scale their engineering team architecture processes. And as they pivoted to sales and support focused part of the company's life cycle, moved to Roku, spent a few years there. Roku, for those of you who may not be aware, manufactures TV devices and TV systems. So I ran billing, device activations, and a few other teams there. And then after that is the current step, which is moving to Google, the TV organization platforms, the Android and Android TV platforms in Google.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you move to different cities and so on, or these were all in the same area?
That's an interesting question. Interestingly, I have lived in the Bay Area for all of these roles, but some of my roles have involved multiple countries. So I have traveled quite a bit for, I think, three of these. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Awesome. So with that, a little bit of background. As I mentioned earlier, this journey has been filled with a bunch of different twists and turns, as one can imagine. And I thought I'll give you some few examples, specific examples of these twists and turns. And these can be both kinds, like really exciting, really positive twists and turns, and really challenging ones. I'll give you some specific examples of both kinds. So my very first job, so I graduated in 99 with my master's, and in about 6 months, I was asked to lead a proposal for a new API. And as many of you may be familiar, it's basically an application programming interface for partners to use at Excite to integrate and get our systems on all the consumer devices around the world. So I found myself presenting in just, again, about 6 months of being a professional to an audience which was mostly gray-haired people who have clearly spent at least decades in the field, which I remember feeling really unnerved and nervous. But somehow, thanks to good mentors and good prep, I was managed to pull it off. And it actually paved the way for a very successful multi-year collaboration where AT&T, Cox, Comcast, many of our partners adopted the new API for successful launches. So that was one very memorable twist, positive twist. A few years after that, couple of years, was my first time actually leading and managing a team. Again, if you're keeping count, this is 3 years after being a fresh grad from Illinois. And some of my team members were more than 10 years older than me, which was, again, putting me outside the comfort zone. But I was blessed to have good team members, people I had worked with before officially leading them. So again, managed that big change. And then since then, several launches, by the way. So these are not the only years where I had positive things happen. But just key ones to call out, I was one of the engineering leads for one of 2 engineering leads across Netflix. I had the opportunity to do that for the very first Originals House of Cards launch. I was literally sitting at midnight along with many of my colleagues when they were clicking on launch at the exact timed with actually press in the room. So it was a pretty nice experience. Many new country launches after that. And several years that followed, scaling MindFlash was immensely satisfying experience. Several successful device launches over several years at Roku that I was part of. And then at Google for the past 2+ years, 2.5 years or so, I've had the opportunity to lead an effort which culminated in the launch of Google's first personalized device for TVs last September. And this involved hundreds of Googlers working across multiple business units. It's a very good learning experience for me. And we are fortunate that it was launched to very, very positive reviews. And we are happy about that. As an engineering team, it's very satisfying when something like that launches. And this is also the first integration of the very famous Google search and recommendations algorithms and infrastructure, but tailored to TV, to the needs of the TV consumers. So that's an important plus from an algorithmic and complexity point of view. Now, on the flip side, there are also twists and turns, some of which you initiate, some of which happen to you that may not be as ideal. So one thing I will say is, again, going back in history, as I mentioned, I grew up, again, very conservative, close-knit family, very close to parents, cousins, family. That's how I grew up. And then, just less than 2 weeks before I moved here is when I was even sure that my visa approval would come through, because I was waiting for a number of scholarship paperwork from the government, lots of things in the last few weeks leading up to that. So pretty nail-biting few weeks. And once I flew here is when it sunk in what a big change in my life it was going to be, culturally, educational system, social system, and not having any family was a big outside the comfort zone experience for someone who had grown up in that sheltered environment. But again, I always had good support, blessed to have good support both at the university and outside during that time. So Excite, the company I mentioned, in hardly about 3 years after I started with them, filed for bankruptcy. This is my first employer, stocks underwater, not your usual typical Silicon Valley story at all. And I was still on my H1. So lots of, should I stay back? Should I go back? Will I find the job? Do I have enough experience? All of that was going on before I landed at Yahoo. Later, a few years later, 2006 brought a mix of things. I had a personal tragedy, lost my father, very close friend for me throughout my life. And I also had positive outcomes, had my daughter, second child, also had a promotion at the same time at Yahoo. So lots of things to handle all at the same time. Then several years into that, these were business decisions, but my team was laid off. I was actually laid off as part of that, as some of the groups here and their work moved to Bangalore. And at least this time I wasn't on a H1 visa, but it was still back to what are you going to do next, what kind of role and all of that, in addition to the personal impact of being laid off. So things to recover from there as well. And then since then, in the past 10 or so years, multiple other relatively smaller twists and turns, like job switches that maybe I regretted, or project switches I regretted, other smaller decisions. So it's a mix, but again, at the same time, as you saw in my previous slide, there were plenty of positive outcomes as well. So I wanted to just give you some examples that are actually real, that hopefully many of you can see as just a bunch of twists and turns during these couple of decades. With that, this, and you can probably see most people with decades of careers behind them have similar combinations of twists and turns in their journeys as well. So as we think of these kinds of journeys and how things happen to you, you make decisions that turn out well, don't turn out well, and so on. How do you continue to find your voice, amplify your voice, really make the voice heard? How do you do that? How do you navigate? And how do you carve your path and keep carving your path in a way that is satisfactory, that is successful, and that's finally appealing to you, whether it's about what you're building, the technology, how cool the things are that you build, how do you scale for billions of users around the world, whatever it may be, that you find to be the accomplishment that you can relate to. So let's talk about that a little bit. So I wanted to just share, a few things that I have found valuable to reflect and practice as maybe somewhat core principles that have helped me. Hopefully you find some of these things to be useful as you think of your own careers and continue your journeys. And for everyone, the journey is unique. So I'm confident that all of you will also find your own core principles, guiding principles, and hopefully in some future time, some of you are helping inspire the next generation yourself as well. So to me, one of the first core things is knowing yourself. And I know this sounds simple and maybe it sounds complex to some at the same time, but I do feel at the core, what makes you tick, what makes you feel excited as a person is what will keep you going and what will keep you scaling heights, whatever those heights are. For someone, it may be, I want to do the best research and really cure cancer, right? I have friends who actually are working on something like that. So what does that scaling height mean to you? Understanding yourself and what motivates you from the inside. And this doesn't have to be the same now as it will be 20 years. All of us evolve as people, but being in touch with what makes you tick truly is pretty critical. I think in achieving your best as well. The other aspect, for those of you who are not already familiar, this is Indra Nooyi, whom I consider one of my role models. She's the ex-CEO of PepsiCo. And something she has said in a talk that I've seen and multiple interviews is, how do you tie, like she always looked to tie the purpose of the company to what an employee is doing, helping employees tie whatever they are doing with a broader purpose and a broader sense of impact and satisfaction. And I always encourage people to strive to do that, no matter what your role is in a company or a project or even in a social group. How, if you can tie your own work to a broader purpose than what you're doing day to day, it always drives better satisfaction, no matter what you're building. So always being able to do that and choosing to do things that make you feel that stronger sense of purpose. And developing a vision. So now that you've kind of internalized what makes you tick, you have a sense of purpose in how you're making choices, developing a vision for yourself. And by this, I don't mean a business strategy or something really complicated or time-consuming necessarily. It's about what do you see yourself becoming. It could be maybe you're saying, I'm going to be the CEO of a company at some point, or I want to create this big social impact, or I want to advance the research in this area and really make it easy to engage devices 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever it is that you see yourself really doing and shining. What do you want to be? Or what do you want to change in the world? A lot of technology innovation has been driven by people who wanted to change things in the world. Google has many examples like that. For example, Facebook was all about somebody feeling passionate about connecting everybody in the world. So it could be what you want to change in the world too. So just developing that vision is very, very healthy. Again, with this, it's not so much that it's the exact thing you'll end up doing. It doesn't actually have to be, or it doesn't have to drive every single thing you think about every single day. But having a vision, I've noticed, provides a framework for you to digest and make decisions as you think about a multi-decade career. It's good to have that view because it gives you a framework for prioritizing your own energies as you progress towards that multi-decade career. And always choose something that genuinely excites you and immerse yourself. So when you choose to work on what you love and what makes you feel good, and give it your absolute best. There is no shortcut to getting that satisfaction and success, right? So the two go hand in hand, because we all know this from even our own engineering projects, assignments at the university, or even after that, is when you really love something, you'll never see the hours going by. You'll keep doing it and you'll do your absolute best. And it's really important, especially as engineers and technologists, to really be in touch with that important core aspect that brings out the best energy in all of us. So always look for, is this thing exciting for me when I think about it? Because there's always going to be practical things you'll encounter, like the compensation, the commute. Does it work for my family? Does it work for my location? Can I travel? There's always going to be those aspects, and those are important. But at the core, if you're not excited about something, the rest of it is not going to compensate for it. And you will never find yourself doing your best. So this is really important, I think. And then so now you're this person who's self-aware, who has found exciting things to do, has a sense of purpose, and you're working on the things that you love. How do you then move beyond that mindset? If I'm doing something I like, I'm doing a great job at it, how do I become an influencer? And this is important for two things. One is you can influence change for yourself too, because sometimes you may find yourself in a project that's exciting, but there are some aspects of the project or the group or something that's not quite working well for you. So how do you drive the change around you so you can create the best environment for yourself? Again, it could even be technology choices. You may think, hey, I was working with this kind of cloud system. It's really not working, but how do you persuade others to go with your change, your recommended change? So always wear that influencing hat for small or big things. And this also is important for you to persuade your people around you on your vision, whether it's your architectural vision, again, technology or research, or a vision of what your company should do. It could even be something where you have a stellar idea on that. So how do you, become an influencer? So I think this is important enough that I wanted to emphasize what influencing is at its core. Because a lot of times during my experience with mentorship and also what I hear as feedback from others is technologists and engineers tend to, this is an area where they tend to need coaching a lot relatively. And so, but it's equally important to understand that beyond the technical chops and the design, influencing others to go with what you're proposing is very, very important to succeed in the industry. So almost like, we are all salespeople right from the time we were children, and we were persuading parents to get us what we want, right? So you've always been a salesperson. So just being in that touch with that inner wiring of salesperson, even as you become a technologist and an engineer, is going to be very important. So always wearing that hat of, I'm proposing this design, this newer architecture. How do I get this group to see that this is the better choice to go with? So wanted to emphasize that. So salesperson DNA is for engineers as well in our day-to-day roles in real jobs. So now you're becoming an influencer, and you're able to get your group, maybe your manager, your boss, to go with the architecture, technology again, or even process proposals. How do you amplify your voice? How do you become known, become heard, have broader impact? So always look for voices to amplify your influence, whether it is sometimes even for a large company like Google, which has 100,000 plus employees. Sometimes there's an innovation in one area, whereas that person is talking more about it, socializing it with other engineering groups, then others start leveraging some common shared infrastructure that then starts amplifying the impact for other Google products. This, in fact, happened in my case, in my team's case, where we have enabled broader Google groups to adopt some of the shared microservices that we built recently. So just giving that as an example of finding ways of amplifying your voice and your architectural leadership. It can come in different forms, sponsors, allies, or helpers. And I don't know if people have heard these kinds of terms before. I think you can probably guess. They're not all the same, but they all can play a role in helping you move that technology needle or your own career. So I want to again go back to chat, see if people want to propose, like, what would you consider a person who is sponsoring you, or a helper or an ally, whether it's in your current role or as you imagine going into the industry? How would you describe or differentiate across these three? I want to see if people have guesses or opinions. Maybe some thinking time there. By the way, there is no wrong answer to any of this, so feel free to guess and think out loud here. Yep, first response, someone who can advocate for you. Absolutely, that's a good way to describe a sponsor or an ally, typically, especially a sponsor. Other responses, who would you consider an ally? Professors, that's a good one too. Can work together. Yes, can collaborate, finding common areas of synergy. Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks for the responses. As I said, all of them are actually correct in different angles. I'll also share a concrete example. When I approached the Google Search research group talking about how we wanted to bring personalization to TV in a way that our global users, irrespective of country, language, or what kinds of media they watch, can truly enjoy it. This is about how do you get it correct for eventually billions of users, right? By the way, I just noticed there are a few more answers. I want to bring that up. I see partner and ally is someone who is there with you every step of the way unconditionally. And helpers, they are there when you need them. And sponsor is someone who sees value in you. That's amazing. That's a good way to distinguish actually all of them. Thank you, Sanjeev and the others for responding. As an example of collaboration, maybe some of the other aspects you all touched upon, when I approached the research groups that work on the core recommendations engine, we discovered quickly that there is a lot of things that are similar to what we can solve on, the general Google search and TV, but there are also a lot of differences. For example, when someone's looking for what to show on the top page search results, you have maybe 11, 20 recommendations depending on the pagination, right? In general, I'm not talking about Google search specifically, but search technology. And people are mostly looking for something they heard on the news, something they heard about from a friend. They just want to know more about the actor or the background of the movie, for example. But when you're sitting in front of the TV on a sofa in a living room on a Friday evening with your family, you're not in an active engagement mode. You're in a passive laid back mode. And the search results at that time, the users just want to do as less work as possible. They're not in a active browsing mode. They just want to say, show me something that I can watch and enjoy at this time. And we notice that it's very complex to see what every single user among billions of users would want to watch at that time on that surface. And you only have the TV screen to show options. So maybe you have 4 or 5 things you can show, and you hopefully want people to find a good match and not spend a lot of time scrolling and browsing and picking options like they would on a laptop. So we quickly found out that we needed to put both our engineering teams to really figure out all the pieces of data. Where do we put the weight on the data models? How do we modify the learning algorithms to pick the right signals about the user? But at the same time, watch out for privacy, security, and not take more data than absolutely necessary and allowed. And so this became a really complex engineering technology problem to solve. But you know what? It was immensely exciting for both research groups to collaborate and develop that synergy, because both got really passionate about wanting to solve this, right? And which is the big reason behind this amazing product launch and the positive reviews is this engineering passion that went into, first of all, recognizing how complex the problem was, agreeing on the different levers that we want to modify, different dimensions, and then building the models, building the algorithms, building actually even the server architecture to scale easily and personalize it. So just wanted to share that concrete example of how this allyship, and also we found sponsorship among executives from both of these organizations who are willing to put the resources, the best research people on it to make this happen. So we were able to leverage all of this. And I just wanted to share some pictures. Hopefully that represents most of what you all represented on chat, of how a helper or an ally might make you feel or uplift you, whether it's in times when your projects went well, or in times that they didn't go well, or times where you just need some help to scale even greater heights than you already reached on your own. So this is the way I think to think about these relationships. And they can happen completely at the university. By the way, someone mentioned professors. I am very much still in touch with my advisor back in Illinois. And whenever I go back there, I visit him. We have both our families meeting each other. And he and I even co-authored a paper when I graduated. So we've kept that relationship. And these are all very long-standing and very cherishable relationships. So I hope that everyone has these kinds of relationships around them for a long time. And now that we've been this great influencer, we have all these allies and everyone helping us. We are achieving great outcomes and feeling successful. Now, it's important to stay curious and stay hungry no matter what you've achieved. And because staying curious genuinely brings humility and makes you feel like you're like that sponge who just absorbs all the information around you and really genuinely listen to people, because everyone has something you can learn from. I genuinely believe this, whether it's personal or professional relationships. So always staying curious, asking questions, no matter what their title, your title, what they've done, you always end up learning from people. So always staying like that and staying hungry, like this hungry caterpillar, right? What happens with the caterpillars? The caterpillar keeps eating a lot of food, going around looking for food, just keep on consuming food. And then it evolves into this really beautiful butterfly. And it is by staying hungry for information and learning and new things and new opportunities that we all as technologists can also grow and evolve and become these very satisfied, successful professionals eventually. So we need to keep staying like that, which is very important, I think. And also constantly learn. This is going back to that analogy of surfboard. So you constantly learn, it's never done. And you review whether it's a fall that you did by plan. This is how normal surfers jump off as well, or whether it's unplanned. And iterate. You keep going back in, and based on whatever you learned, you keep applying what you learned and keep growing. And that's again very, very important. And it never ends. It's like those of you who have done core engineering, if you think about the feedback control systems, this is an important part that all of us as engineers, no matter what we choose, we have to remember that there's something that it learns, it feeds it back into the core engineering bits. And that's when a better output, incrementally better output, keeps coming from the system, whether it's an electrical engineering system or a mechanical system or a computer science program, right? You want it to train, learn, and become better. So think of it as a control systems parallel, your career as well. And I would almost say most important of all, we talked about this in the beginning too. Again, a long-term career brings twists and turns, some that you initiate, some that just happen to you. And it's really key to truly enjoy the ride. That's what actually keeps you going. And always make sure that that part in you is always feeling satisfied with whatever you're solving, whatever you're building. Because again, this is like a marathon, it's not a sprint. And having that mindset, that genuine mindset, where you can enjoy the journey in addition to the outcomes, is very, very important. I feel, because I think many of you probably are pursuing research, and many of you have done PhDs or maybe pursuing it. And you all know this experience of you spend multiple years, you have a hypothesis, you go build something, you may spend several hours, days, weeks, months pursuing your track, and then you may actually learn something valuable, which could be that it worked or that was not a track worth pursuing, and then you come back and restart. So these kinds of things take the same level of perseverance, patience, and still that drive to keep wanting to solve, and the satisfaction of the steps, no matter how long or complex they seem, or what the outcome. So I think many of you can probably relate to this even as you pursue your graduate and research work here at the university as well. Also, I know that this GRACE series is also for women students, and I do want to also mention something specifically in that light, or any minority groups, whether it's racial, ethnic, gender, or otherwise. And this can be interpreted. This is something that is generational significance. I think behind every successful woman, there is a tribe of other successful women that have her back. Again, this could apply to any group, any social group anyone is part of, but keep this, I would say, on our minds from both sides, both as someone who's entering into the early stages of your career. Look for networks, look for support systems in your university, in the industry, wherever you can connect with and get that support. And as you continue on a great journey and become successful yourself, think of how you can uplift or have the back of others and really influence the world or the environment around you, your company, your group, to be a better place one step at a time. I feel that generationally, we all have both the freedom, privilege, and we also have the responsibility. So I did want to share that, because this is something that I truly believe that we all have a sense of that responsibility as well as the privilege of that support. And always look for uplifting talent around you. Again, you may be a postdoc, a PhD student who's helping someone who's doing their master's or undergrad in your current life, or it could be someone you help as you make your foray into the industry. But uplifting talent around you is immensely not just satisfying at a personal level, but something that I think we all should strive to do in small or big ways. This is what makes all organizations a better place, a more inclusive place. And we build better products, build better technologies when everyone feels very enabled to solve very complex problems. So always have an eye out for uplifting talent around you. So some parting thoughts, just as a way of summarizing some key things. Know yourself. I think that's a really important place to start. Develop a vision. Pursue what you love, what makes you feel good, and give it your absolute best. Influence, always raise your hand. That's what takes you places. Find voices to further amplify your influence. And always surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you. And constantly learn, review, iterate, make sure that you're having a fun ride, you're actually genuinely enjoying it, and uplift people around you. With that, I do want to bring us back to, again, how excited I am for all of you. You have so much ahead of you, so much promise, so much innovation going on around you, including what you're going to drive and lead. And I'm hoping that at least some of what you heard today helps you feel even more equipped, even more excited and inspired to truly graduate with a lot of really good credentials from this great institution and really take the world on and influence change in whatever way you want and succeed in what you choose to do. With that, I wanted to just open it up. If people have any questions, thoughts, comments for each other, for me, feel free to shoot any questions.
So are there any questions for Shobana today? So I have
one.
Go ahead, Dr. Bastani, go ahead.
No, I have one question. I don't know if it's really appropriate or not. But when you said about influencing, but what we don't want to happen is some bad person trying to influence people to make bad things. So how to make sure that only good things will be influenced?
That's a great question. And I think that probably all of you will go on to become leaders in organizations, whether it is as technology leaders again, or you may be running organizations at some point. So I'll say it from both angles. You know, one thing at a personal level, we all need to apply the right judgment. As human beings, we're all part of society, part of groups, and look at what is the right thing to solve. How is that helping my group or helping others around me, or the product? What is the innovation you want to influence, or the culture, right? Sometimes you may want to change something in the culture. So first of all, as a human being, an individual being, applying the right judgment, it starts there, everywhere. Even at the university today, you all need to be applying the judgment, right? So that will always apply. And the second thing is, as leaders, how do you make sure that your organization has the right checks and balances so that everyone is influencing the right things and you make sure there aren't negative impacts for people? Typically, in most companies, you will have a lot of help and guidance from central teams that give you guidance when you're managing or leading teams to make sure that you have the right place and environment to work. But you should always, I think, be proactive about standing up for making sure that everyone feels comfortable and included in the way things are getting influenced, in what is getting influenced, and also how it's getting influenced. So I think there will be support in most large organizations, but each of us has individual responsibilities as well.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
Sure.
So Shobana, I have a question, and that's with regards to your like you've worked in so many companies, right? And now you're working for Google. So out of all these companies, which one was the most challenging for you? And how did you, overcome that challenge? And the second question is with regards to the balance of family and, work. How did you achieve that?
Sure. I think those are both great questions, and I'll treat it as two-part question. I think I would say almost like rather than saying which company was more difficult, I feel like all the companies were pretty straightforward to navigate, to really pursue your ideas and to succeed. It's more that each of them have different environments. So the how of what it takes to navigate and succeed and get your projects done to get noticed, it was just different. For example, MindFlash, coincidentally, I've had the opportunity to work in like a 30 people company, which was MindFlash. And then Netflix, Roku, Yahoo were a few thousands of people. And then Google is 100,000 plus. So it just takes different skills to navigate. For example, at MindFlash, one of my challenges was I was part of the CEO's team, so presenting to a board, a non-technical board, and persuading them to see a technology direction. So how can I overcome the challenge, make sure to persuade them for a technology direction? So sorry to interrupt. By the way, are you able to see my video or not? I couldn't tell if I should disable the slide sharing.
We cannot see your video. You can disable the slide share, Shobana.
Okay, great. Thank you for confirming. So bear with me for a minute while I do that. Is my video okay now? Are you able to see?
No.
Not yet. Okay. How about now? You can see?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I think during share mode, it turns off the video automatically. But I'm glad it's back on. Back to your questions. So I would say it's almost like the challenges was more about tuning yourself to the company's navigation style and the culture, which because of company sizes and what they solve, they were just fundamentally different. So at a place like Google, a lot of getting things done works with persuading business leaders who are not in your management chain, who may not yet be aligned on things that you're trying to drive. How do you get them excited about an idea and innovation? So that's what you need to build. Whereas with MindFlash, as I said, it's more of, it's a small, close-knit team. How do you persuade the board to offer resourcing for you? At a place like Netflix, there are also things that are not related to technology. For example, I had the opportunity to kick off the very first Women in Tech meetup and conference, and that has now become a standing part of the culture at Netflix. So that was something new at Netflix that I wanted to kind of initiate that wasn't already there. So different companies, again, have different things, different environments. And I would say that's, to me, the challenge is understanding what the company operates like and tuning what you need to how it operates. On the second part, the work and life balance, I think that's an important one. The one thing I would say, and I don't know if this is surprising to some people, but I think that balancing, even though it is definitely has specific things for women, it is true for every individual in some ways, because everyone has personal interest, personal life, things going on, events in their personal life, so they always have to balance with the workload and their work passion. So I'm going to answer a bit more, maybe generically. I feel like for me, I look at it as overall, what is the balance I feel versus looking at work and life as two different sides of a coin. I look at it as overall, am I generally feeling good about where things are, what I do, and how I feel. So I think surrounding myself with people at work that truly energize me, that truly have an uplifting influence has gone a long way into feeding that energy back at home. And at home, having the right balance of, again, how I spend quality time with my children, my two children who are now teenagers, and with my spouse. I think he and I have a more like a peer mentor relationship almost. So that's helped a lot in both our careers. So how do you figure out everything that's going on around you to uplift yourself and what you're able to accomplish? is kind of how I've tended to manage both. And also the other thing that I've learned over time, sometimes the hard way, is there is no such thing as a perfection or a perfect balance. So let's shoot for feeling really solid, really good and achieving great things, and not for what is perfect, because there is no such thing as perfect or ideal, because for each one it's different, whether it's home life or not. So creating your own yardstick of how you measure success versus what is socially expected, what is expected by someone else, it has a very liberating influence on you. So I would share maybe those thoughts in terms of striving that balance.
Thank you so much, Shobana. There are a few questions on the chat. Do you want to quickly skim through those?
Sure, absolutely. I want to make sure I'm not missing any. Do you want me to just go ahead and read it out loud for everyone, the one that I'm going to answer, and then I'm just going to go in the order in which they're. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So first question, how did you choose your career path after graduating from college? Because there are different areas within the field, and what would you say makes a company good to work for? Great question. And like many CS graduates always find themselves in, I also had the privilege of having multiple offers as I graduated. So I'll talk about both. I think for me, it was actually a mix of very tactical and also strategic. Among the options, I chose California as a location because I thought it was strategic for the career I was choosing, to be in that place of opportunity. So that was one consideration. But also about what was I going to solve. I think the Excite at Home opportunity to really solve something very complex and something that I could fundamentally change and impact globally was very energizing for me. So I felt like personally I would be excited about solving an engineering problem that's complex and has global impact. So that was my criterion for choosing that role. And I think what makes a company good to work for, I personally love two things a lot. One is just technology. I just love to be always immersed with constantly learning, talking about technology and ideas. So a company that provides that in the culture, in the forums they have, in the way people collaborate in the company, is something to look for. And the second thing for me has been people. Whom am I going to be surrounded by? And what kinds of people am I going to work with is something I look for in interviews even today. So I would say those two things make a company really good to work for. Next question, how do you know your next step in your career is the next step? For example, I'm debating whether doing a master's is the right move or even what master's I should pursue. This is going to be a very personal choice. I have a lot of mentees who ask me that question. In fact, I recently know someone who got master's at a top business school at Google, who thought about it for a year, even deferred admission, and then chose to pursue career for now. But I've seen people do both ways. I think if you probably have a lot of professors who can give you even more advice, better advice than me. But I think I chose a master's because I wanted to go deeper and really understand and build a solid foundation deeper on a few areas versus start applying what I've already learned. I felt like I wanted to go deeper and learn some core areas and even create a more solid foundation. So that's one reason to be motivated to pursue an advanced degree. And how do you know it's the right step? Again, think about what criteria you have. Like I said, passion for technology, or is it the people? Is it location? Is it being able to travel? Think about what would be engaging to you, and look at making decisions based on that. And sometimes, you do make mistakes in job switches. I have my share, and that's okay too, because you're making some assumptions and making decisions, and you can always learn from bad decisions and recover as well. So I would share that. I'll take up maybe a couple more questions, a few more here. Question from Tao Shen, how to create a vision. I like programming code and doing some projects, but under pressure, I even have difficulty sleeping. I want to know how to find a vision under pressure. I can definitely relate to what you're saying, Tao. It's something many of us have faced, definitely in grad school. I remember days going without sleep, trying to get my code to work myself, and since then too. I think it's more, I have found something I do even today is I carve out a few hours every Wednesday afternoon, no matter what's going on for me that week, to do what I call deep work or deep thinking time, where all I do is do heads down and think about something. And I think many others have their own ways of carving out time, but you need to be like taking a step back and really thinking deeper to be in that vision mode. And it's okay to use a whiteboard, to use a scratch, but whatever works for you to create that vision, whether it's about a technical vision, what am I going to solve, how am I going to work the next few months or years, or it could be what do I want to become, but always find that heads down time, carve the time at least once a week, I would say, for something like that. Maybe if we have time, I do see we are at 6:02. Do we have time for 2 more quick questions and responses?
Maybe you can take one more and then we can stop.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just going to go in order. Question from Jeffrey Matthews, being in the Bay Area and at Google, do you see co-workers having concern with these tech companies choosing to censor very free speech via their platforms and policies? That's a very good germane question for because especially social networking and just connectedness is improving. I want to caveat first saying this is an answer I'm giving as an independent opinion. I'm not representing any Google official response here. I want to clarify that. I think, people are always going to be cognizant of finding the right balance between having true free speech. I think the very first question about how do we make sure it's the right influence is also ties into this. We all need to feel the responsibility as individuals, and companies have responsibilities too of having, the balance between we want to hear employees and how they feel and genuinely care about employees. And I truly believe Google leaders have that culture in all of my interactions, caring about employees as human beings first, right? But at the same time, we want to be responsible, both as human beings, as companies, as technologists, about what we are putting out in the world, because we are operating as part of a society. So I think all companies try to find that balance, and so does Google. And hopefully all of you are going to help these companies find that balance as you go into the industry as well. But thank you for that question.
So I think we are out of time. So we want to thank Shobana wholeheartedly for her inspiring and excellent talk today. And I think you have patiently answered so many questions. I mean, there were so many questions put out to you. And we thank you so much for all the mentorship and advice. And thank you so much for your time today. I would also like to take an opportunity for Dr. DT, if he can thank the speaker today and then end the talk.
Yeah,
Professor
thank
DT
you,
here, there
thank
he
you,
is.
the speaker tonight for a wonderful talk, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
So let's give a round of applause for Shobana today and for her time. Have a great evening, everybody. And this was our last talk of this year. We will come back and with a new set of talks in August or September. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. And I wanted to just in 2 seconds say thank you, Pushpa and Norma, for the amazing coordination and making it so smooth for me. I'm glad to have been part of this forum, and stay in touch, everyone. Feel free to reach out and network with me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.